Krisko, thank you for being on the pod. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, great to be here. I love podcasts.
Do you?
I really do, actually.
I have quite a rotation of them that I listen to that are a big part of my life and how I interact with reality. So I
Hmm.
hope they're above board. I hope they're all good because otherwise I'm staking my sanity really on the disembodied voices of people named John or Tyler. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Uh,
Tylers in the Southeast.
oh
Yeah.
God, I know. Tell me about it. So I've dated six of them, huh? Now, okay, so we are big fans of yours, obviously. We were just saying the other day, like our previous guests on this podcast have been dog shit. Like we need a hitter. We need somebody with some name recognition. We need somebody who's tearing it up in the local music scene. And we arrived, of course, at Caitlin Krisko. So maybe I guess tell us a little bit about yourself first. Where might people know you, and what have you been up to lately?
Um, Caitlin Krisko in the broadcast is in full hustle mode right now. We have a debut EP coming out this fall, which is really exciting. We went to the UK last fall on tour. We had our single operator take off a little bit over there, surprisingly. I think
Wow.
thanks to just social media and just literally social media. And so we're going back over there again this year. We've played Floyd Fest many times in the Virginia area. We've also our alumni of Front Porch Fest and Rooster Walk. So we've just been hitting the ground so hard and running so hard for the last couple years. And it's been an incredible experience and also a really challenging one at times.
I have no doubt because like you all really are like you're operating at such a high tour level right now in terms of where you're going, how many rooms you're playing, like your range keeps getting bigger seemingly,
Mhm.
but it doesn't seem like you've sacrificed your loyalty or your admiration for the fans regional in Southwest Virginia, whose
Oh, I
music
love
I think,
Virginia so
yeah,
much. We're obsessed with Virginia. I will play Virginia for the rest of my life, no
nice,
matter how high this rocket goes.
yeah,
Virginia will always have an incredible space in my heart. We have had some of our biggest milestone moments happen in the state of Virginia. I love the music community there. The community there has uplifted us so much. I think a lot of people don't know this, but Caitlin Krisko in the broadcast is unsigned, no manager, no booking agent. We have
wow,
nobody. We are fully self-represented. So every show you see, every performance, every tour, every album, everything you see, we are self-contained and DIY. We certainly don't want to be. We definitely look forward to the time where we sign with management and a label and a great booking agent.
right.
But we're just really holding out for that next step, and making sure that we work with people that can really take what we're doing and add a yes and to the end of it. You know what I'm saying? Instead of a but or a dot, dot, dot.
Yeah. Wow, you're using improv vocabulary. I really like that. I
I'm
um
so embarrassed.
we said early on we weren't going to have any improvisers on the podcast, but you just outed yourself.
I
That's
really
it. It's over
I
now.
really just did. Oh my God. Now you know I was a theater kid. What can I
You know
say?
what? It's all right. I did 4 years at the Upright Citizens Brigade,
Oh,
so
no way.
yeah.
I actually have a lot of friends who are alumni of the Upright Citizens Brigade.
Oh yeah, I was there. I was there. I was yes anding the shit out of New York City for a while. So
Awesome.
yeah.
That's
In
great.
Salem, Virginia. In Salem,
That
Virginia.
Oh
is
yeah.
the way to do New York City, honey.
You've
Yes,
gotta.
and
Yeah.
You've gotta. So where are you from?
I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, but
Oh,
when my
okay.
parents divorced when I was in middle school, my incredible mother was very supportive of my dreams and just saw a sparkle in me, I think, before anybody else did, and said, you know what? Let's move to New York City. I think you need to go to a performing arts school and you need to be surrounded by a bunch of weirdos like you. And so we moved to New York City. So I'm kind of a hybrid of Detroit and New York City.
Wow, that's an interesting hybrid right there.
That
Yeah.
is. There's a lot of
Yeah.
mafia involvement there.
Um, Sidestep certain areas of the city. Yeah. But going back to, I mean, the festival circuit that we talk about, I've played several of them. Which one have you? We were talking about this the other day. Which one would you say you've had your maybe craziest or most fun experience at playing on stage?
Definitely, it was the last time we played at Floyd Fest, and we had a day slot, a day and afternoon slot
Right. Yeah.
Right.
at 2 o'clock, I think, on the main stage. And I remember when we got the contract, and I was like, okay, main stage, 2 o'clock, like that's gonna be a hot, hot one. You know, day sets are pretty, like literally temperature-wise hot.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I'm always
Yeah.
thinking about how warm it's gonna be because you have to plan your outfits accordingly. So I'm thinking this is gonna be a pretty casual 2 o'clock in the afternoon set. You know, it's like an early day set. Not a lot of people are gonna be around. They'll probably be over at the food area. And we get to the stage and the field is full. And I'm so confused by this. I mean, so wholeheartedly in my depths of my soul, I was like, did we like get our set time wrong? And I started like having anxiety. I was like, I
Is
think
Marcus King here? What is this? Who's
right,
here?
like for real, like did I fuck up the set time, you know? And I think it was this really wonderful festival kind of god, Richard, who is always at every festival and always helping me out in a bind. And he was looked at me and he was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're the 2 o'clock. And I was like, but I don't understand. There's all these people. And he was like, they're here to see you, Caitlin. And I was like, that's absurd. Like it just, and I don't mean to say it. I mean this, and I'm saying this to any musicians out there who are listening, who are like, oh, you know, maybe thinking that I'm being like performative by telling this story. I am saying this from such a genuine place of like emotion and gratitude. Like it was an unfathomable moment. Like we've just never had that large of an audience ever come to see us ever before. And
Right.
it's been a dream my whole life. And we've been doing this for a while. So it's, you know, it's been a dream that I've been really holding on to for a long time. And to see it actually start to physicalize was genuinely very surreal and almost felt psychedelic.
Yeah. Two follow-ups to that moment. What about nerves in the moment when you realize, oh, that is for us. Now we got to go do it. Do you get that?
Let's go, baby.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Let's
Confidence building.
go.
I'm more of the nervous type. I'm thinking through the whole set 30 minutes before, and until the moment we start, I'm okay. But
Yeah.
before that, it's just don't talk. Let's just go. Let's do it, and we'll be okay. Secondly, as far as your performance that day in that moment, did the reaction from that many, more people, did that kind of bring out a different level of the performer and the front person they were seeing?
I think that the answer to that question is yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah. I think that, you know, we still go and play shows for 10, 15, 20 people. And I love those shows because those people are just as important
It's intimate.
as 10,000 people in a crowd. Like it really, the individual is equally as important no matter the size of the audience. That's really important to recognize because everybody deserves a great show. But I'm going to say, when you're performing in front of a sea of people who are like loving it and they're in it and they're celebrating and they're like in a joyful place with themselves and they're giving you that, yeah, it's an incredible energetic exchange that's truly baffling. It's incredible.
I'm much more like you, I think. When I go out, because I do comedy, I don't have an ounce of musical talent. I love it. I love music. But now my contribution is my fandom. That's all I have to give you. But when I go on stage to do comedy and I walk on stage and I see the big room, I'm like, oh shit, the hard part's done.
Yeah.
Like every single day and week and month that you all have been on a too crowded tour vehicle, schlepping from one show to the next, all of those individual moments went into, I think, creating the reality. Because I mean, I've been at 2 o'clock shows that aren't well attended.
Sure.
You're just a powerhouse on stage. And
I mean, we've played 2 o'clock sets to nobody. We
Right.
have, like,
Yeah.
for sure. But
Yeah.
we still try to bring it, you know?
Yeah.
It's a good practice. We always said, oh, that was a good practice. At the very least, we had a good practice, you know, and it was fun.
I think also too, to kind of to what you said about the hard part is done. I think that's so real you know, as artists, we want to corral and invite people into our spaces to share with them. And in a world where there's so much to consume and so much to watch and listen to and can just be a part of, to really get people to be a part of your creative space is such a gift.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
And then to have that many people there, the hard part is done. I really look at audiences and I believe they're rooting for what they're looking at on stage.
Right.
Sometimes when musicians are like, I'm so nervous, I'm like, but like, why are you nervous? Well, what if they hate me? I'm like, what if they hate you? They paid like $60 to be here tonight. I'm pretty
Yep.
sure they're into what you're doing. Like, you know, like I kind of assume if people are paying to come see something, they're already rooting for you. They're not against you.
Right.
And I don't know, I love the camaraderie and magic of audiences. I love performing for them and I love being a part of them.
Can I ask you something? Because you, we sort of touched on it earlier, but it's not just that you have this kind of, I don't know, uh, core of the earth operatic strength to your voice, right? Like that's what got me to the first show. I heard you playing outside somewhere, and just like a lemming, I had to walk near and see what was going on. And you're up there and you're in this outfit that looks like it was designed by an alien who'd only seen Zsa Zsa Gabor movies. And it's just the whole thing worked. Your band looked good. You looked fabulous on stage. And why do you think, truly, and I know you've thought about it because you're a theater kid, recovering or not, why do you think more bands don't fully appreciate that what they're doing is a theatrical performance?
Yeah, I've
Maybe
seen
they're
that.
not gay enough.
I guess. Are they not gay enough? Is that what's going on?
You heard it here first.
I don't know. I'm an openly queer bisexual queen. And so I'm like, I definitely look to my queer community and the history of my community for inspiration and costume and
Right.
character and camp. And
Right.
I love that. I don't know. I don't know why more people aren't more theatrical on stage. You know, you can't, if you don't go over the top, you can't see what's on the other side, you know?
You're right. Wow.
Also, I think if you can embody the whole visual auditory presence of a rock and roll or what have you show, I think it just gives the audience a little bit more too. And that touches to the point you were making of you have so many things to connect to, so many distractions in this world. And the fact that they would pick you in a moment, that does mean a lot. So on the topic of some of the outfits, I know people probably ask you a lot, who's your biggest inspiration musically? What about the outfits?
Gosh, well, now that you're talking about outfits, I feel so embarrassed that I'm in like my tax season outfit today. This is tax season chic right here. This is
I like it.
artists scrambling to finish their taxes 3 hours before midnight. Who
A lot of
inspired
1099s, though, in fairness.
This
Yeah.
was filmed on the 15th.
A lot of
everyone.
1099s. I don't envy you.
Yeah.
I love costume and clothing and self-expression, especially growing up in New York City, and going into the club scenes. I just love that culture in general. I love the aesthetic of really kind of the Renaissance, the nod to like Renaissance in 1970s
Right.
fashion.
Right.
Like if you go and look at like what Jimi Hendrix was wearing, it was actually just like Pied Piper from like a castle in
Right.
like,
Crushed velvet and all these things.
you know,
like Prince did. Yeah.
and I love Schiaparelli as a designer that I'm obsessed with. I literally think everything Schiaparelli does is gold. It's so interesting and strange, and I dream of the day to be able to wear clothing by designers like that. But until then, I love working with small designers. For example, I just had 2 pairs of custom pants designed by Cat09, which is an incredible small designer that does these like very sexy bell bottoms. And I actually got my initials like studded on the butt of it, which I'm excited about.
Macho Man Randy Savage right there. I like
Yes,
that.
baby.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
That's the
definitely
theater kid in you too, though, right?
Say that again?
That's the theater kid in you, because I know someone who sews and can make costumes as well. You know, it could come right to my head. Not everybody would have that immediate. I could probably pull this off myself until someone's designing them for me.
Absolutely. And especially, as a woman who is mid-sized and someone who I can go into stores and most of the time I can find clothing that fits me, but a lot of the time I can't. For example, I just ordered stuff from an Australian designer and I straight up ordered extra larges because I was like, you know what? Let me just be safe and I'll even get it like tailored to my body if I need to. Y'all tell me how this thing doesn't even zip up my body. This extra large that they swore was a US size 16 and I am a US size 10, 12. Like,
Oh,
get
I
out of
think that's on
here.
them. I think
That's on them. The water spins
It's
the
on
wrong way.
them. Oh, yeah, that's totally on them. And it's
Yeah.
like that women run into that problem so much. I mean, I bet if women are listening to this, they're like clapping their hands. They're like, girl, yes. Like
Right.
it's a chronic problem for women in fashion. And so sometimes it's honestly literally worth spending a little bit more money to work with someone directly and have them design something and have like two things I wear on tour all the time for that run instead of like 10 things that I sort of go through that are just fast fashion garbage. I'm not into that at all.
Yeah.
Interesting. But I just, for me, it always comes back to whether your way into the theatrics is costuming because you have an inherent aesthetic and understanding of it. Or if your thing is lighting production, maybe it's set design. Like there are bands out there bringing these classically and orthodox theatrical ingredients into their performance. Because the reality for me, as someone who soaks up live music more nights a week than not, you have to be a really fucking great band to rise above ambient noise unless you give people something to pay attention to. And I
Sure.
feel like there's so many local and regional bands that could rise above their station if they didn't all go up on stage and look for 3 hours like they're trying to crack a safe. If I miss the theatrics when it's not there. And you see enough bands in a row that aren't really making an effort in that arena that when you catch a band like Caitlin Krisko in the broadcast on stage and you get to be part of that experience, you realize that everything you all do up there is for us so we can send it back to you. And it's this beautiful thing. I was at that 2 o'clock Floyd Fest set and I was told by someone, they said, you've got to go see this band. I had forgotten, and walking by, that's when I heard you singing. And so I appreciate the fact that it's not just nuts and bolts musical talent, but that you've found a way to elevate it to a sort of artistic and individual expression that feels very real to the people who know and love you.
I appreciate that. I do. I think that sometimes it can be you and I are on the same page. I love a big show. I love costumes, theatrics, pyrotechnics, lights. I'm like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Chapel Roan, let's go. Like
Right.
I want all the larger than life moments and dream. And even like watching Sierra Farrell's rise, her beautiful rise in fame and seeing the creative expression grow and expand is like so incredibly beautifully inspiring. But realistically, something I've learned as I've gotten older as an artist is like, not everybody wants to express themselves in that way. Not everybody wants to like extend themselves in a larger than life way. And there's some artists that really actually find like a lot of power in kind of a more subdued, like more like calm setting. I think it's just more about like environment. You know what I'm saying? Like environment is such a huge part of music. And so it's like, if you threw Caitlin Krisko and the broadcast into like a listening room coffee shop, people would go deaf and they would be like, what the fuck is going on? This is so way too much.
Right. I'm just trying to have a spoon here.
But like throw us on a stage at night at sunset at a festival when people are ready to party. And I'm like, this is my bread and butter. Let's go. And so I think it's all about context. You know what I'm saying? But I do agree with you that I love like a moment where people put thought into their outfits. They put thought into the set design. That's a really thoughtful observation that I love seeing when people do that, when they literally build things. And yeah,
I think you're right too. I don't want to see Bella's Bartok at 11 a.m. at a coffee shop.
No,
I don't want to do that. I don't
no.
need that much klezmer jazz that early in the day.
Right.
I
And
save
that's
that a 16/8. I do 16 hours off of klezmer jazz, and then I do it for 8.
Yeah, there's like a
Employment
vibe for
originally.
all times of day. Like
Right.
morning time, I wake up and I'm like listening to lo-fi music and, you know, the Casey Musgraves record. And
Oh, yeah.
then maybe at lunchtime, I'm like moving into like the new Maggie Rose album because it's a little bit more getting into my day, a little more soul, you know? And then maybe midday, it's time for me to take a Peloton class and I'm, you know, rocking out to some heavy EDM music. So it's just, it's all context.
That is so true too. I mean, it's almost like that's the same way for me. It does sometimes at the end of the day, I'll be like, my whole day was scored with music. You know what I mean? My steps, my grocery store adventure, all scored with music.
I just wish there was less Josh Groban in it.
I
Look, I
know,
love him.
yeah.
Oh, I
But
was
I
gonna
just
say,
wish
like, what's your go-to? Like, what's like
Oh
your
yeah,
go-to?
yeah. A lot of Josh Groban. No, no, not really.
not really.
I'm all across the board. I mean, if I'm not learning a song with Liv, that a lot of Amy Winehouse, Zeppelin, Elvis, Aretha, anything like this. A lot of
Okay.
old jazz too,
Yeah.
rap,
Yep.
anything.
Okay,
How do you
so
feel?
you're from Detroit. You're this Detroiter New Yorker hybrid.
Yes.
One place that people think of, I think, as maybe the cultural center of art in America, and the other place that I think people from outside of Michigan, or from outside of Detroit city limits, let's be honest, there's this perception of it as kind of a lawless place, where people get shot and everybody's poor and things haven't been good since Reagan got shot. Um, but that's not really the case, is it? I mean,
Not
it's
at
a
all.
down and dirty artistic juggernaut in its own right. I think it just people from outside the city have a hard time seeing past the dirt and the reputation.
I mean, understandably so, because I mean, and not to go back to like history lessons and stuff, but with the Detroit riots and then so many people moving out of the city of Detroit in the 1960s and 70s through the 80s, there was such a population decrease so quickly in the city that it did create a lot of crime because of a lot of disparity and a lot like a lack of access for so many people. What we've seen over the last like 15, 20 years in Detroit, and this is only me speaking as someone who is lucky enough to go home and visit friends and spend time with family there. There's been an incredible resurgence and renaissance of creative self-expression and art and incredible restaurants and art galleries and record labels and just such an amazing rebirth of the city of Detroit. For anyone who's listening, if you're looking to have an incredible experience, a summer experience in a new city in America that you've never been to, I really recommend checking out Detroit and spending a long weekend there and really soaking up the culture, the buildings, the infrastructure, the architecture is beautiful. There are literally neighborhoods in Detroit that look like you're in Europe, just because of the time that the city was built and when people immigrated over here and the style of architecture when the city was being built. Even from an aerial perspective, there are parts of Detroit that actually look like the spoke of a wheel, in the way that it was designed. And so there's just such a cool life and vibrancy to that city. And I think that it, you know, it deserves to be rebranded. It deserves to be seen differently than I think how it has been seen for most of our generation.
Would agree. Logical follow-up question: have you ever seen the show Detroiters with Sam Richardson
I have
and oh god, what's his name? At the Tim Robinson from I Think You Should Leave. They did a
yeah,
whole comedy show about these guys trying to make something happen in Detroit, and it was honestly like I had only ever heard about Detroit as being this place where like gritty HBO dramas are made,
yeah,
right? You know, someone's getting shot. But then, you know, having spent a little bit of time there, it's like it's like 30 minutes from Canada, right? It's too stupid close to Canada. It's basically another country. The history and the culture, you cannot duck it walking down the street. It hits you in the face at every turn with every building, every statue of an icon who's a household name. It's a fascinating place. And I would have to think that, you know, your time in New York was the match as far as your artistic endeavors and creative growth started to be concerned. I would say that Detroit, in a lot of ways, may have been the powder keg. Your experience there, yeah.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to soul and R&B music, you know, Detroit and Muscle Shoals are just so iconic and important. And for me to now look back and realize, like, oh, when I was growing up, Motown music was ubiquitous. It was all over the radio, all over the speakers in my house. And I just thought that was what everybody was listening to. I thought that's just what music was. And
Same.
then when I moved to New York City, and then especially down to the South, I realized, oh, like, you know, the Temptations are for me, or Bob Seger is for me, what
Yeah.
the Allman Brothers are for my bandmates who are from North Carolina, you know? And so it's really taught me a lot about how special coming from Detroit is and how influential that music has been for me. Like, I only ever listened to music from singers singing from their soul growing up. That was like
Right.
the introduction to music for me.
Yeah. It's the same for me. That was my dad was in a band all my life back to the 70s and everything. And that was the same way for me. It was always music playing, and it was always from Stevie Wonder to what have you, to the Allman Brothers. All of these things are big influences. I grew up in the clubs watching him as a little kid. Probably
That's
when I
so
shouldn't have
cool.
been, but
Oh,
What was
yeah.
the name of your dad's band?
well, back in the day, it was Skyjack in the 70s. They used to go up and down the East Coast tour. They played with like Little Feat, Alabama was at the same
That's
place they were
awesome.
playing or something like that. So they had a lot of cool experiences. And he was in several more regional local ones as he moved up. So
Right.
by the time I was born, he played real local because he wanted to spend more time with me. And plus, he was 36 when I was born, so he really had his stint out there, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Does he still
Especially
play?
for that era. Yeah, oh yeah, he still plays. He's got a jazz group together now, and they just recorded like a promo EP with all these cameras and stuff.
Wow.
I didn't even know he was doing it. I'm like, what are
So
you
cool.
doing out there?
Yeah, no, your dad's
Going
got
to Hollywood.
your dad's got layers.
Yeah.
Your dad has layers for sure. Do you
I
come
love-
from musical or otherwise creative stock?
I do. My mother was a classically trained pianist,
Oh,
and she was also part of a traveling singing group called the Singing Lebo Sisters.
wow.
My great great grandmother was also briefly a backup singer for June Carter.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
So you talk about deep down. That's about as deep down as you can go, the Carter family.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they
And it
sang
was
everything
brief,
before
but
everybody sang.
I'll always say it because it did happen.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
awesome.
That's fantastic. Okay, so mom's kind of out there in the world. She's doing her creative thing. All right. So you come by it honestly, I guess. Like my dad was a firefighter. My mom was an engineering assistant for NASA, and so somehow, and in fact, I remember being about 10 years old, and it kind of reminds me of what you were saying earlier about the value in having those parents who see the creative spark before you do and aren't so quick to squash it in favor of a more pragmatic vision of the future.
Traditional.
Right. I mean, I remember distinctly a conversation I had with my mom about 7 years old, and I told her I wanted to go to school and I wanted to be a lawyer, and she said, "Oh, but you're so funny," and I
Oh.
was
That's,
like,
that's
"That's
rare.
kind of a role reversal from what you would
Yeah.
normally advise a
Be a
child."
funny
Like,
lawyer. Just a
maybe, yeah.
joke cracking lawyer that
Why do
nobody
you,
wants.
why do you want to be an evergreen profession that will always have work when you could live in an old Volvo and
Yeah.
play the Chuckle Yuck for the third time this year?
Hey, those were good times.
I also
But-
think though, like how incredible that mothers can have that kind of impact on
Yeah.
humans. You know, that
Yeah.
you as an adult man can remember this moment that I'm sure she probably gave no thought to. It was just a passing response of like, but you're so funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that like shaped the course of your entire life.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. I mean, I'm sure other things did too, of course, but just I think a lot about, especially since losing my mom last year, really unexpectedly. I think a lot about her and the ways that she influenced me and inspired me and supported me and encouraged me without ever suffocating me or expecting things of me. She just wanted to see me shine in the way that I was meant to. And I think that that's what any parent can hope to be for their kid.
That's the mark of a successful parenthood, I guess, right there.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
A lot of people don't have those, as it
No,
turns out.
you don't see it too much.
A lot of
I have
people
learned
don't.
that. I have learned
Yeah.
that in my year
Yeah.
of grief, that grief not only is people grieving the loss of parents they love, but also the parents that they will never have. So it's
Yeah.
a very complex thing.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So, man, I'm gonna we should have you back one time for a podcast that's only serious. Uh, because you've got,
No
I mean,
music. No.
how long's it been since you lost your mom, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't mind you asking about anything. And in fact, that's the thing I've learned. The biggest thing about grief is that there isn't any question you could ask me where I would be like, "Oh, don't ask me that." Like
Yeah.
I'll tell you anything. She died February 25th, 2023 last year.
Okay. Okay.
She had an allergic, like a fatal allergic reaction to a cleaning product she was using.
Wow.
Mhm.
How do you wrap? I mean, it's one thing to wrap your head around the death of somebody you love, when it feels that almost pernicious and random on the part of the universe. I don't know if that makes it easier or harder to deal with. I can't wrap my head around it. Uh,
I've talked with a lot of friends who have lost parents to terminal illness, which obviously is a much slower.
right.
Mhm.
It's clearly a very different experience. I think that what is really kind of like separates it is that, at least from the conversations I've had with friends who've had parents that have slowly passed away from terminal illness, is um there's a difference in the surrealism.
Yeah.
I It took me months, literally months, to even say my mom died and it not feel like a character I was playing in a movie.
Right.
It felt like there's this really amazing artist. His name is Moses Atwood. This record is over 10 years old now, and it's the last track on the record, and it's about the experience of losing your mother. And he says, once I had a role in a play and I knew it so well, and every night when they dimmed the lights in the scene where my mother died, and every night I'd cry. And it's this idea of like what seemed so true was a lie. And it was this like personification of like every day you feel like you're waking up in a play and it's not your life.
No.
And I talk a lot about my grief. It is a huge focus in my life because no one ever talked about it before my mom died. I was a complete stranger to it.
Right. Why do you
A
think that
total-
is?
I
Why don't we
don't
share that with each other?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm so confused by it because when I share my grief with people, they immediately open up. I've had some of the most incredible conversations with people on tour, talking about the loss of their parents, their wife, their husband, their brother, their sister, their lover. Like it's so connecting. Like it's so disarming. Like it's such a universal thing. And I wonder if maybe it's not talked about because people who it hasn't like seared onto their heart yet. They're like afraid of it,
Mortality.
like, yeah, like like my biggest fear was my mom dying. I always said that. I mean, literally like a month before my mom died, I was like, you better live for 25 more years. Like, I can't deal with that. And like
Yeah.
there were like some really weird moments that happened right before she passed away that I was just like, whoa, did we all like weirdly know in some strange way that something was about to I don't know. Well, that's for another day. But like, I just, I think maybe people are afraid to be broken and not okay.
Yeah.
Um, and so, instead of talking about it, it's like, oh, I'm fine, I'm okay, it's whatever. And they kind of like push it aside or disregard it. And I've I've just like really met it face to face. And to me, grief feels more like this really excited, like childlike energy that's just like, your mom's so amazing and she's so great and you love her so much and da 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 da. And I'm like, yes, I know. And she's not here anymore. And it's like hard, it's like hard to like not know what to do with that feeling.
And there's a beautiful, beautiful play that was written, won the Pulitzer Prize the year it came out and hit Broadway, but it's called Rabbit Hole.
Okay.
And it's about it sort of deals with the aftermath of this, late 30s, early 40 something couple who lose their son suddenly in a car accident. And there's this beautiful monologue that the grandmother character gives at the end of the play where she talks about grief, where it's like somebody hands you a rock and the rock is just big enough and just heavy enough to make you realize it's there all the time.
Mhm.
And it's not that you ever get to put down the rock, you never leave it behind, but you get to the point where having to carry it every day is something that you've developed the strength and resistance in yourself to be able to do. And that has absolutely been my experience with grief. That hole never fills. You just, I don't know, it never closes. You just find other things to put in it, I guess. You find other things that are meaningful and in some way related to that legacy of that person who broke you in that way. And it's hearing you talk about it so openly should not be a novel thing. It shouldn't be an act of bravery to be like, I'm really messed up over this, and I don't
Yeah.
know that I'm going to be okay anytime soon. And for people to just go, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like my favorite thing is when people are like, that fucking sucks. Like one of my friends who lost her mom, I loved it. It was the perfect text. Literally 10 minutes after I posted about my mom passing away, she texted, well, dot, dot, dot. At least the worst thing already happened to you. Just like,
Somebody that can find something like that, yeah.
it was
Oh yeah.
perfect. It was like, yeah, you're right. You're
Go on
totally
from
right.
here.
Like there,
We'll go on
okay,
from here.
levity. There we go. And I think you're really right about The Rock. I think you're really right about that. I think you're really right about I'll miss my mom every day for the rest of my life.
Right.
My best friend, she was my soulmate. She was my North Star. She was my record keeper. This world is like really, really different without her in it for me.
Right.
And it's changed my life, and that's okay. That is okay. This is like, I am not the first person to go through this, and it's the first time I've gone through it. Luckily, it'll be the only time I lose my mom, right? You only go through it once, so there's that as well. And for me, I've always seen it as like my analogy of The Rock is like the last year of my life, the grief of my mom's death has been like a television in like a room of my house that's always on. And I always hear it and it's there. And I can't sit in front of that TV all day. I can't sit and watch that TV all day. I have to get on with my life. I have to do things. I have to live my life, especially considering how much my mom sacrificed for me to be living the dreams I'm living right now. Like, this is the best way for me to honor my mother is to live the life I'm living fully with joy, with enthusiasm and gratitude and creativity. But that TV is just incessantly there. It's on when I sleep. It's on when the only time I feel like it gets drowned out is when I'm on stage,
Right.
which makes sense.
So there's your full circle, yeah, right there to the point of it and everything. Yeah.
And I guess that leads me to the question, because I have this debate with myself when I'm performing, especially when I'm really into it. It's like, did I nail the character that night, or was that unapologetically me?
Mm.
I don't know where
Comedy, that's hard too.
there's really, I don't know. I still, after all these years, have not figured out exactly where to draw that line. But I do feel, whether it's a character or not, the person up there truly joyfully expressing themselves, however irreverent, however poisonous what I'm saying may be, that is at least something that I can aspire to. If I have to go on stage, and if my character is the only part of me that can experience that, that at least is, I think, a reason to go back. It's a behavior to try to bring into your everyday life where I'm not always funny and I'm not always interesting. And there are entire days where you would look at my activities and think to yourself, oh boy, this guy probably needs some Zoloft. But those are just those days. Feed the days where I really lay myself out there. And as I get older, I feel less the need to apologize for those days to other people. Like,
And even probably to yourself, maybe,
you know what? We're not there yet. I'm gonna make it other people's problems for now. Uh,
That's why we were
I have definitely learned to ease up on being hard on myself when I have those days. I think that, yeah, I mean, I just think like, look at the world we live in right now. Like, you're not having hard days. Like, where are you at? What's going on? What are you not tapping into? Like, there's a lot to be,
right.
Feeling heavy about. And so it's important on those days that you don't like hold shame for yourself when you're in that space, because you're a human doing the best you can. And it's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. So, we've been at it for a bit now. I do want to ask you generally, well, when can we catch you next in Virginia?
Yeah, because we got something big coming up.
We do have something big coming up. Where can we catch you next in the Commonwealth? What are your plans for the rest of the year? And in your ideal, walking on sunshine future reality, what does this time next year look like for you? What might you have put under your belt as an accomplishment by then? Do you think in those terms, or is it really?
I mean, I love that question. I like being asked that question. I don't know if I like actively ask myself it enough, but I do
Right.
that question. Okay, Virginia. You can see Caitlin Krisko in the broadcast this Friday, April 19th at the Elmwood Amphitheater. We are opening up for the incomparable Margot Price. Unbelievable.
Miss Margot Price.
I am obsessed. I have been obsessed with her for so long. And I'm not even kidding. She has been on my list. Like, every year I write a list of like dream people to open for, dream festivals to play, dream things I want to do. Last year, one of the bucket list items that came true was performing at the Caverns in Tennessee. We opened up for Blackberry Smoke, which was amazing.
Oh yeah, Blackberry Smoke, yeah.
So sick. What a cool show. Their fans are incredible. I will give them a 10,000 out of 10 in terms of energy and vibe. Blackberry Smoke fans, if you're listening, I live for you.
They've got a good smoke.
Margot Price was on my list this year, so I got to check that off.
That's so cool. Yeah. That is awesome. And I really just like seeing talented people get to do what they love. That makes me
I'm so excited about seeing her perform. I'm really thrilled about it. The last time I saw her was at Floyd Fest, where I fangirled from afar and was like, hey, I want to know you. So then we're playing Floyd Fest also in Virginia, and also Rooster Walk. So those are our festival plays this summer. And then as I mentioned, we're going overseas for a couple of months for the beginning of our album release tour. We're going to many different countries, and then ending in the UK and England, which we're really, really, really excited about. UK is on fire. I love British people. They love American blues, rock and roll. It's a match made in heaven. And then we head back to the States for stateside album release shows in November and December. And I can't say the date yet, but we will be performing at the Grandin Theater in Roanoke for our album release show. We'll also be performing in Richmond and Charlottesville, probably Abingdon. So keep an eye out.
Where are you playing when you go to a town like Charlottesville now? What's the room? Have you surpassed, say, the Southern? Are you in the amphitheater?
I think we're still at Southern level. Yeah. I mean, when you're doing amphitheater stuff, it's like, I mean, so let's talk about next year, right? Like this time next year, what do I want? What do I want to see for this band? I will be so real 100 with you right now. 1 year from now, I see the band. I'm like, call me Miss Cleo for your free reading. We have a manager that is killer and gets us a great record label deal so that we're able to release the full length record that we are waiting to release because, honey, that feels like yummy dessert that needs to be eaten at the right time, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You want it to be right.
Yes. And great booking agent. This time next year, maybe we're on the road supporting a band like Blackberry Smoke or Nathaniel Rateliff or
Oh, yeah.
Marcus King or yeah, like I really am ready for more women in roots rock music. There's just not enough female representation in roots rock music right now. It's so male heavy. And I'm like, let's go, gentlemen. Invite the switchy woman.
I
Let's
know.
have
I
some
was just
fun.
gonna say, do you think it's because women have just never suffered?
Oh, well, you know. I mean, I really don't know what the deal is historically with
Everyone.
rock and roll music and why there aren't more women. I'm like, that is in women 100%. Like,
Yep.
women are sassy and exuberant and theatrical and larger. I mean, like, I know I mentioned her earlier, but like, Chapel Roan is like a living example right now. If you have not gotten into her music, she is like bringing the heat, the fire, the life to not only her recordings, but also her live performances and her costumes and her stage performances. It's like the biggest, most amazing gay dance party, and it's a vibe. And like, I love it.
Talking about the 70s and outfits and everything, I've recently been on this kick of watching Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac do Rhiannon, that famous one in 77 when she has like the black with the fringe everywhere. And just how heavy she starts just stomping at the end when she's just wailing. And I was telling Liv, my singer, this, and she's a female singer in the rock and roll. I mean, she's doing Robert Plant like Robert Plant can't do Robert Plant anymore. And so it is fascinating to watch her up there and watch her grow and express herself more. And as the band, we often find ourselves going, yes, we believe it. You go believe it. They'll believe it. 100%. You got it. And that's something beautiful too. And that type of rise and watching her go from singing in public one time until 2 years ago, she's got a band and we're doing Rooster Walk and the Roanoke circuit and everything. She just
I love
watched
that.
her bloom. Yeah.
I love that. I love watching people come alive on stage and really find their identity.
Yeah.
You know, like even in the last couple of years in my own stage performances and just, I think kind of pre-pandemic, there was this hesitation for me to just be over the top and kind of just campy on stage sometimes. I thought maybe like people wouldn't like it or something. I don't know. I don't really know what I thought. I haven't unpacked that fully yet. But
Absolutely.
I don't feel that way now. And now
Absolutely.
I'm
Great.
like,
It did trigger
did
something.
y'all watch the finale of Real Housewives of Utah? Let's talk about it. And like, I say that on stage because I'm thinking about it and I need to say it. Like,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
Something did come out of this era of angst of I'm tired of whatever the regulated structure was before. Let's break it. And then people started going with it. And as the drummer, I'm not only am I watching her to get energy from her as if we're doing something's got a hold on me. I said, oh, bump, all those bumps, she'll start doing them with me. And I was big Elvis, and Ronnie Tutt playing for Elvis always said, I'm just playing for a stripper, man. That's all I'm doing, because I am accenting his movements. And it was so important.
That's awesome.
And that really drew me into wanting to, kind of correspond with the singer a lot. I love it.
That's awesome.
Even the bass player. I'm like, you keep doing your bass line. I'm watching her for this moment.
You've never put it like that to Liv, though, right? Right.
No. Well, definitely, yeah. Watching her moves, I definitely feed off that. I try to catch them.
I mean, between Elvis and Teddy Pendergrass, like there was a lot of male stripper energy back in the day.
Oh yeah.
We're trying to keep it alive, huh?
Yeah.
Here in Roanoke, Virginia.
Yeah.
I mean, Greta Van Fleet boys are kind of bringing that energy on stage sometimes. I love to see it. I'll
tell you what.
That first album, I'm like, this is Zeppelin 1. That's straight up. But yeah, he always does like that Robert would do, all of that stuff.
He is an unreal vocalist. Like anyone who's like, oh, they're just Led Zeppelin. I'm like, what? Like, okay, and he's
Yeah.
amazing and like an unbelievable vocalist. Like
Unreal.
Who
anytime
else
I've
has
seen
touched
him,
it
I'm
since
like,
Zeppelin?
say it again.
Who else has touched it since Zeppelin? You could say he sounds like Led Zeppelin. Why is that a bad thing? Because no one, for you to actually compare it that closely means that they did something
That
right.
boy is the Timothy Chalamet of Robert Plants.
Yes,
But the
yes.
second album opened them up a little more to a little bit of a different sound and
It's got a
certain
different
songs.
vibe for sure. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know what? I'm just like, as a singer, the reality is if you open your mouth, you sound the way you sound. You know, there are certain things you can do to alter tone and quality and approach and attack and all that stuff for sure. Yes. But you can't put on a voice like Robert Plant. That's not a thing.
No,
That's
No,
not
it's
no.
not.
what I mean. Like that when you refer to a singer like Robert Plant or Aretha Franklin, you're talking about people with vocal prowess that is like unreal agility and ability, right?
Right.
And so that's what the Greta Van Fleet guys had. It's like that's the same. It's like that's an amazing, unbelievable vocalist with just beautiful skill and gift. And like
Obsessed with opera. I always have been.
love it.
I'm obsessed with opera. I love, the more dramatic and legato and bel canto and Italian that shit, the more I crave it.
I love
And
it.
there was one of the greats, Enrico Caruso. One of his acquaintances, after he died, wrote a book called Studying Caruso's Vocal Technique. And he purports to be able to tell you in mechanical detail how to recreate the tone and power of Caruso. But you just leave the book understanding that only dozen people every 200 years get to be Enrico Caruso.
Correct. Exactly.
They got that,
They
and
got the anatomical lottery ticket.
they did.
Absolutely. And that is very true. And that's why I always say, even like what you said, like only he can sound that way. Like, yeah, you can like learn the techniques, the manual technical things to like sing that way, but you're still not going to have that voice. That's why I always say when people are like freaking out about AI, I mean, there's definitely stuff to be freaking out about AI. Like, let's be serious. But from the perspective of like art, no, the art you make, you are the only person on planet Earth that can ever make that song, that painting, that dance. If it comes from you, it's yours. It's from you. It's your essence. And I love that about music. I love it. I love that there's been millions and millions and millions of songs written, and I can still tonight write a song that no one's ever written before.
Yeah. And you can
That's
sing
so
it
cool.
a couple ways in different recordings that have nuances to it that the studio didn't have. And then someone will
Totally.
listen to that and be like, oh, I like that little. I do that a lot with a lot of demos that have been released of older bands. And you're like, wow, that gives me a whole new perspective on the song.
Yep.
Another thing nobody could touch.
Totally. Yeah. And that's why collaboration is amazing. That's why I love working with great producers, working with great musicians. Like you come together and you create this thing that could only exist because of the combination of people involved. I mean, that's the same thing with live music concerts.
Absolutely.
Caitlin Krisko, you're wonderful.
Thanks.
We're both huge fans.
I wore this shirt for you because it's really flashy. I was supposed to wear it at the Martin's block party, but it came in too late.
That kind of relates to my next question, which is if we show up to Elmwood Park wearing matching bedazzled bell bottoms, would it make it more or less likely that we could be friends?
If you wear bedazzled pants to my show, I will have you in my wedding party.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
I have never been to a big, fantastic queer bisexual queen wedding. I am looking forward to it.
Should we wear the bell bottoms?
We should.
I mean, that's a given, gentlemen. That's a given. But yeah, no, of course, please come to I was going to say, if y'all want to come to the show, I can put you on the list so that you can just.
I would love to. I cannot wait to see you perform again. I'm so excited to hear about everything that you've got going on in your life and career. And there is a time where I predict you and your band will have such status that we will chuckle at the idea that you ever spent an hour of your time doing this.
Yeah.
So I can't wait for that because it's going to give me a great story. Yeah. And you're going to be too far gone to care about the trauma of doing it.
Well, how about this? Let's make a deal. Let's make a deal so we can manifest this because I want that to happen, right?
Sure.
But let's make a deal. when that happens, we will have a follow-up interview because we'll do like a little like what I said then, what I say now, you know,
Sure.
like
I
kind
like
of
it.
that whole thing. So I'm always happy to come hang out with you guys.
Well,
That's
thank you very
fantastic.
much.
Thank you. Bye, Caitlin Krisko. We so much appreciate you being on tonight.
Thank you. It's good to chat with y'all.
Absolutely.